to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics here at Houston Media Source, sponsored by Drug Policy Forum of Texas. You can find them at dpft.org. Before we start today's show, I'd like to take a moment to recognize and remember those 5 young girls who were killed and those 5 who were critically wounded in Pennsylvania this week in a random shooting incident. And in today's top news, drug policy reform related, an excellent editorial was in a Texas newspaper, The Ranger, where a recent Cato Institute report titled Overkill, the Rise of Paramilitary Police Raids in America, Radley Balco describes how over the last 25 years, America has seen a disturbing militarization of its civilian law enforcement, along with dramatic and unsettling rise in the use of paramilitary police units, specifically referring to the SWAT unit, Special Weapons and Tactics. As many as 40,000 per year raids have terrorized nonviolent drug offenders, sometimes even entering the homes of innocent people. Earlier this year in Fort Worth, Texas, the SWAT team was sent out to Steve Blackman's home, where they unlawfully entered and broke into his home while he was not there. Not only did they violently and forcibly enter his home and disrupt all of his possessions, but they also slashed his truck tires while he wasn't there. Later, they realized that they had trashed the wrong house. Earlier this week, North Carolina Governor Michael Easley signed a bill that will create a commission to study the industrial uses of hemp. With that move coming, California awaits whether Governor Schwarzenegger will sign a similar bill. And North Dakota finalizes a rule that will allow farmers to grow hemp under a 1999 law. The Beneficial Uses of Industrial Hemp Act in North Carolina passed as part of the Studies Act of 2006, and it will lay groundwork for developing industrial farming. And according to the new law, a commission will be created to study the uses of industrial hemp oil as an alternative fuel and motor oil, the uses of omega-3 rich in industrial hemp seed and industrial hemp oil in snack foods, body care products, and food supplements. So the Tar Heel State will soon be beginning to study about the uses and hopefully be able to actually grow and industrialize this crop. Yesterday in the Bay Area, drug agents arrested 15 in raids on a major marijuana club. 13,000 pot plants were seized, along with $125,000 in cash. Federal agents went after a major Bay Area marijuana club, raiding 8 locations in San Francisco and Oakland. The group leader, Sparky Rose, has been long investigated by San Francisco and Oakland police. And also in the Houston area, the October 5th, the Forum on Juvenile Justice. Please join Houston, Texas Coalition for Advocating Justice for Juveniles for a Forum on Juvenile Justice, Houston, Harris County, and the state of Texas. This community teach-in will feature youth, parents, community representatives, and elected officials putting their hearts and minds together to dialogue about how to create a stronger, more effective, and responsive juvenile justice system. This will be Thursday, October 5th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the United Way of the Texas Gulf Coast at 50 Waugh Drive, Houston, Texas 77007. Invited panelists will include Representative Harold Dutton, Chair of the House Committee on Juvenile Justice and Family Issues, Representative Sylvester Turner, Chair for the Appropriations Subcommittee on Criminal Justice, Judge Eric Endell, and Constable Victor Trevino, amongst others. Please visit the TCAGE, that's Texas Coalition Advocating Justice for Juveniles website for more information. And now I'd like to introduce our very welcome guest, Judy Baker, who is the candidate for the Libertarian Lieutenant Governor. So thanks for coming, Judy.
Well, thank you very much for having me here.
Okay, great. And so you're running for Lieutenant Governor in the state of Texas.
That's right.
Okay. And we wanted to ask you a few questions, and we invite callers to call in if they have any questions about libertarianism, Ms. Baker's campaign, or any other questions. So the number is 713-807-1794. So first of all, what made you decide to run for Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I've been a very active libertarian for probably about 20 years, and I like what they stand for. I believe in fiscal conservativeness and social tolerance. And as a result, I felt like I had to start doing something instead of just sitting back and complaining.
And you have a history of being involved in the community. I believe you worked for CenterPoint Energy for a long time. You've lived in Texas for a number of years, and you've also married to a third-generation Texan, so you've got your roots raised here. And I guess also, what other things have you been involved in Texas?
Well, when we first moved to Texas, we were in Central Texas, and when we were in Central Texas, I was a Girl Scout leader, as well as worked for Central Texas College in their Information Systems Department.
And where is that?
Up in near Killeen.
Oh, okay.
In between Killeen and Copper's Cove.
Okay.
And I worked for HLP, which is now CenterPoint. So same company, just they changed names. And for 18 years in their management department, working in information systems, helping people get their requirements done and get their systems developed for them, the user groups. And retired in late 1999. And since I've retired, I've been involved in some community activities. The main one that I like the most is I'm a docent at Houston Museum of Natural Science. And there I have the opportunity to take fourth graders, HISD fourth graders, through tours of the museum and hopefully broaden their minds, get them experience. A lot of times these are kids the first time they've ever even been to the museum. So great
nice.
Opportunity.
Definitely helping the kids out with their education and getting them involved in the science community. And in fact, I got the chance to peruse your website, and by the way, it's very well organized. It's judybaker.us, and you actually listed and pinpointed one of your main issues was education. So can you describe for us how you'd like to change the education system in Texas, which very much needs changing and evolving? So what is your stance on that?
My thoughts on education is that all children should have the right to go to the school that their family thinks are right for them. I think that they should be able to have a choice. Well, our schools right now most of our public schools are focused on security as opposed to education. It's a pretty rough place for kids. They get in trouble for chewing gum or doing anything like that. They go to the court systems now because of the Safe School Act has made it illegal to break school rules.
Right. And even with drugs, I'm not sure about weapons, but definitely, minor amounts of drugs. There's a zero tolerance policy. In Garland, kids were kicked out of school for bringing prescription Tylenol, with the Tylenol with codeine. So I know the zero tolerance policies are definitely just really don't work for our schools. And also, you mentioned that education, what we're based on. I was wondering, what's your policy? What's your stance on the was it the TOS test or the tax test?
Well, and this is a scary thing about if we went to a voucher type system where kids could be allowed to go to any school they want to, where the tax money went with them. Is if the government's in control of the money, then what happens is that they might think that they have the right to control schools. I don't think testing is the way to do it. And that's my biggest fear, is that we come up with a voucher type system, and then all of a sudden the government's saying, okay, you will teach exactly from our textbooks, you will teach exactly,
right.
You will test, you have to prove that you're doing it, and it's the parents that should be making the decision, not the state.
Right. Oh, definitely. We're already seeing how the government's holding their fist over schools, just as they do with state funding for highways and things like that. With the Student and Teacher Safety Act, which was passed maybe 2 weeks ago, full-time teachers and administrators are required now to, if there's any suspicion of drug activity, to report them for a full, SWAT military-style investigation, and including anywhere from, book bag searches and random searches to full strip searching. So, and that's for any school that is government-funded. They can just yank away their funding. So, definitely so you believe that we should take the government out of will not take the government out of schools.
They've already got control of the money, and that's going to be hard. That would be a hard change.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel that they should not be controlling what is taught. I think it should be, those decisions should be made at the local levels, as well as the parent should have the decision as to what school he wants his child to go to, he, she.
Yeah, okay, that sounds definitely like a great idea. And speaking of government funding, one of your next huge issues, which definitely affects us citizens of Houston, us being the most prevalent huge case of problems, is the prison situation in Texas. So we all know that Houston and Harris County jails the most people. We have the worst overcrowding problem, and yet, what's being done about it? Well, we're just jailing more nonviolent offenders. And Texas Public Policy Foundation made a statement that Houston, at least there should be means made to decriminalize small amounts of marijuana, or nonviolent offenders should not have such harsh punishments. And I'm wondering, so what's your stance on, the prison issues that we're facing today?
Well, certainly our prisons are just filled with people for minor marijuana use, major selling. If marijuana was made legal, we would, first of all, we've got this war on drugs, which has spent billions and billions and billions, and has not stopped the drug use. The drug use goes up exponentially. In addition, you can't be sending people to prison because of the fact that they want to smoke a marijuana joint. This is the most ridiculous thing in the world. We got violent criminals out there that we just are leaving on the streets, or we're paroling them early because of the fact that we have to make room for all these terrible, evil people that have been caught with some marijuana. And the sad thing is the state continues to criminalize other things, and I mean, drugs are not the only thing. They're criminalizing lots of things, where people that do things that are just private things now become criminals, and this is just not right. Our jails, we don't have enough room in our jails for these. We need to back off and take away the criminalization of these type of things. Small-time
offenses, definitely. I was talking with a parent the other day, and they said it completely irks them when they read a story or hear about someone, a pedophile or a child molester type person who got off on parole or probation or something or other, and then excuse me, marijuana users, not even distribution but possession, sometimes even for medicinal use, they are put in jail, and they are definitely serving jail time. So that's one of the ironies of the justice system that should be reformed soon. So we could go on and on about the drug policies that are completely iniquitous and wrong in this country, but we may save that for later. So let's talk about the last issue that you had, which was interesting to me. Not many other candidates were talking about this, but it's definitely an issue that is coming to light, especially as we have more public invasion, things like that. You said the right to property and private use, and I think that kind of stands into your what you were just talking about, but can you elaborate on that, on how you feel about that? Well,
and of course, I'm talking now about the state taking property away from people mainly. That was, and you look at this Trans-Texas corridor that our governor has done behind closed doors, where he's stealing, 1 million acres from Texans, and Texas taxpayers are paying for all this construction work and then giving it all to Spain, so that Spain can own it and charge Texans to ride on the roads. This is going to drive an awful lot of farmers out of business, ranchers, small ranchers whose livelihood is based on their property.
Right.
In addition, property taxes. Property taxes are unjust as far as I'm concerned. People don't own their homes. The state owns their home.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And that's actually one of the fundamental ideals of libertarianism, is owning your own property. And
And making your own decisions, not having the government tell you what is right and what is wrong, not having the government tell you what you can do in your own home.
Well, can you speak a little bit on libertarianism for any of our viewers that may not know too much about this?
Sure. Basically, libertarians, the main things they believe in is the Constitution. They support the Constitution, and they support freedoms. And as we go through history, as current history, our freedoms continue to be taken away from them. And of course now it's so sad because of this new need for security. Freedoms are just rapidly going away, and it's sort of sad that the people that are running our government don't understand that our founding fathers fought for freedom, not for security. Security was not the issue. The issue was people should be free. People should be free to be allowed to do what they want to do as long as they are not infringing on other people.
Right. Maintaining that right to security without giving up your essential freedoms, which is something that was just passed into law yesterday or this week, was the, I'm not sure what the actual bill was, but passed by Congress that it would basically, defines the means of torture and biological experiments on detainees. It does not, it basically says that they cannot be tried just as civilian courts or military courts. They can be held, guilty until proven innocent. So that's definitely taking away, not only that, but it applies to, I believe it applies to citizens here. If I'm wrong, please call in.
No, I'm pretty sure you are right that it belongs to citizens here.
Yeah.
There's lots of citizens, ever since 9/11, American citizens that have been in prison.
Right.
Their families have not been able to get in touch with them. They've not been charged. They're just, so I mean, this has been going on, and now the Congress has finally blessed what the administration's doing.
Right. It's kind of like, passing a law after the crimes have been committed. So it's basically obstructing the Geneva Convention. So what's going to stop other countries from doing this? We're just trying to justify our means. So, many essential liberties have been taken away, and that's what I really like about the libertarians. Some of their ideals on paper may not seem as optimal and everything, but I do believe that they have a lot of mindsets that, through our bipartisan system, we pretty much give up for granted and don't understand that this is something that, this country is founded on. If you give up your rights of freedom for security, then you deserve neither. So, we actually had Jeff Dale, the Harris County Libertarian head.
He used to be the chairman.
Okay.
He was chairman last year. Former chairman, right.
Yeah, so he spoke to a great extent about libertarianism, so hopefully our audience understands a little bit more about it. But going back to your campaign, you live here in Houston and everything, so you said you've been traveling around Texas to, wherever you're invited. So if anyone would like to invite Ms. Baker to come speak about libertarianism and about her campaign here, not just the bipartisan platforms, but hear from our hopefully soon-to-be multi-party system, then you can visit at judybaker.us.
Right.
And you said recently you just came in from...
Today.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I was in Castroville last night.
Okay, and where's that?
It's just west of San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
And luckily, my husband and I got to stay in the Castroville Inn, which was really nice. I know it's not called, it's called the Landmark Inn.
Oh, okay.
But it's a state park, and it's just a small, it's very old, old buildings.
It's a landmark.
Yeah, it's a landmark. And so we got to stay there while we went to this forum. And the best thing about this forum, I thought, was they assigned high school students to each one of the candidates that came.
Oh, very nice.
And so I had a young high school student who did a wonderful PowerPoint presentation on me, and if anybody wants it, go to my website. I'll be happy to email it to you. It tells you more about me than my website, I think. But I got to meet her, and she introduced us, and then all the candidates got up and did a 3-minute presentation. And then we later had questions and answers, and that took a long time. A lot of judges there. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because a lot of judges running for office, I guess.
So it didn't just have lieutenant governors, it had a lot of candidates.
Oh, no, there was about probably 30 of us there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that will make for a long Q&A session.
So, and I go to a lot of these forums. We had one in Houston Thursday a week ago, and we will be going up to Copper's Cove to another forum this a week after this one, and then a couple more in Central Texas area.
Okay. So can they find out more about where you'll be traveling to on your website?
Yes, they can.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. And so another thing I want to mention is where you can find early voting at how to register for early voting or how to apply for a form is www.sos.state.tx.us. In case you'd like to get an early voting ballot form or find out where you should vote or whom you should contact to make sure that you are able to vote and have a voter's registrations card. So tell us more about your campaign. What are some of the questions that you were asked in these? Because I'm curious how much even high school students or anyone would know about.
Well, the forum I went to last night, the high school students, the student that was assigned to me just wrote emails to me asking me questions, and I sent back answers to her, and then she put together a presentation. But the questions from the audience were adults. So it was the Chamber of Commerce put it together with the high school.
Oh, very.
And one question that was asked to the lieutenant governors was about the fact that evidently Medina County is where I was, and Medina County is evidently growing very rapidly. And it's funny, I've had this question before on a survey also, and it's a funny question. It was like, we're growing so fast, how's the state going to take care of our extra burdens of expenses? Well, my feelings are, if they're growing so fast, they're obviously getting a lot more sales tax.
Right.
And I think maybe they don't need somebody else to take care of them. But I'm sorry, it's a philosophy of most people in this country anymore is, who's going to take care of me? Who's going to give me money for what? Right. Something good happens to me, somebody owes me money. Something bad happens to me, somebody owes me money. People should take responsibility for themselves.
Right, definitely. I think we've gotten into a system where it's like, well, how's the government going to handle this? And then when everything goes awry, and we're like, well, we hate this legislation, and this, I'm violently opposed to this. Well, then what are you going to do about that? Also, a very libertarian ideal that you should take care of yourself, and it applies to even anywhere from taxes to schools and highways, which are the broader terms, but it applies to even, taking care of yourself. You should be responsible for your own actions. People who choose to use, quote unquote, illegal substances by today's U.S. standards, if they do something that is a violent crime upon someone else, whether it's alcohol, cocaine, or something else, they should be responsible for those actions. But if you're in the privacy of your own home, then, and if you hurt yourself, I guess, by drinking 10
But who's the government to say?
Right.
Is the government
Well, no, I meant
to say
health-wise, hurt yourself.
You can't hurt yourself? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that the government's responsible for saying what we should do in our own home and how safe they can keep us from ourselves.
Yes, that's true. So going back to your campaign, what are some of the, in Texas, there are a few states where the lieutenant governor actually has more shoes to fill than the actual governor. So what would be your roles and responsibilities as a lieutenant governor?
Well, of course, in Texas, lieutenant governor, speaker of the House are the two most important jobs. The governor, it looks good, talks good, and sometimes begs for money from the federal government. But the speaker of the House and lieutenant governor are the two people that control the bills. So any bill that is presented to to the House to look at has to be approved by both those two people, or by the House, it has to be by the Speaker of the House, and to the Senate it has to be by the Lieutenant Governor. So it's a very, very, very important position.
Right.
And one thing that makes me so sad, again, I hate to keep going back to the Trans-Texas Corridor, but there again, all done behind closed doors, evidently in a late night session, somehow or other the House and the Senate gave Perry permission to do this, but then from then on, everything was kept behind closed doors, and all these deals made behind closed doors. And I feel that the Lieutenant Governor should have stepped in and said, listen, the Senate has a right to say what should be going on. The House has a right, but nobody had a right except Perry.
Right. Probably paid off by the same people. But, so how do you intend, as if elected, you would obviously face so much bipartisan policy, so much bipartisan disruption and everything. How would you intend to, get people to change, get Congress to change its ways, Texas legislature to understand these policies of libertarian, to bring up to light more libertarian stances?
Well, and of course, you can't just change, because we've been going down this hill for a long time.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, I would work with them just to do what's right. And my goal would be to try and take that trend that we've been going and just reverse it, and not a fast reversal, but just reverse it.
Right. Okay, so it looks like we have a call now from a caller, so we're going to go ahead and invite them. Hello? Is it line 1 or line 2? I don't think so. Okay, well, we invite them to call in again at 713-807-1794. Sorry about that, caller. I think we're having technical difficulties. So we were talking about we've definitely been on a downward trend, and you try to make it known and everything that we should get back libertarian stances. So I think we've got our caller back, so
okay,
let's go ahead and get them on the line. Okay. Hi, caller. Sorry about that. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Hello?
Hi.
Is Wesley there?
No, you've got the wrong number. So, no prank calls, please, because we don't appreciate those. But, recently in the news, and we're getting to about the midway break, so we'll probably talk a little bit more about this when we come back, but, there have been, and I was listening to 740 on the way over here, there have been quite a few scandals in the news involving the Republican senators, and one of them being, of course, Senator Mark Foley, who, was obviously involved in this internet child, talking inappropriately to a 16-year-old in another state, crossing state lines. And whereas, this is, of course, a month before elections, whereas a month previously, Republicans, that was one of their main issues, was, cracking down on internet pornography and cracking down on all these internet predators. So how do you feel about some of these scandals and things like that, and how it will affect current elections this year in the Republican Party?
I really,
or what goes around comes around, maybe.
No, I don't know. I think when you walk around talking about how moral you are, that you ought to be moral.
Right.
Because if you keep patting yourself on the back and you keep pushing out and saying other people are immoral, but we're so moral that sooner or later, you've got to be awful lily white if you're going to expect everybody else to be. And I think that whatever Mr. Foley has done is not good.
Right.
It's very, very bad.
Right.
But I don't know how it'll affect the election. I think there'll be spin put on this from the people office, and it won't affect it too badly.
Right. And I guess unfortunately for the Republican Party, this came at a very inopportune time. But you're absolutely right. As much as it's been all over the news and everything, but as much as we'd like to kind of take glee in this, that the same thing could be happening to any Democratic candidate or politician, and in some other aspect of morality. So, yeah, you're right. And we've got 2 seconds until we take our first break. So, actually 2 minutes, sorry about that. So, right, and then another thing that kind of caught my attention was that in a pro-Republican speech this week in Reno, Nevada, and I guess this is his direct quote, Bush said, "If you listen closely to some of the leaders of the Democratic Party, it sounds like they think the best way to protect the American people is to wait until we're attacked again." And of course, this is in light of, finding out that 2 months before, attacking on our country, they had reports of, terrorism intelligence and being aware that perhaps these attacks were going to take place. So I think that's also kind of another example of how things will kind of be twisted during election time. So, and you also were, very much in favor of, it's just, if you can't give up your security rights for your freedom rights. So, you can't give up your freedom in order to be more secure. Right.
You can't. And of course, I'm running for a state office, not a federal office. But,
right.
But certainly the administration that's in federally wants us to give up all of our freedoms, and says we're going to Iraq to set them free. And he takes away freedoms from us every single day. This is a pretty sad story.
Right. Well, we'll talk about this more in a minute. We are going to take our midway break, and we'll meet you back up in about 2 minutes.
This week in drug war history, September 30th, 1996. President Bill Clinton signs into law the Omnibus Consolidated Appropriations Act for 1997. Fiscal year 1997 totals provide increased drug-related funding for the 2 leading drug law enforcement agencies in the Department of Justice. October 2nd, 1992. 31 people from various law enforcement agencies stormed Donald Scott's 200-acre ranch in Malibu, California, looking for marijuana plants. Scott, who believes thieves are breaking into his home, comes out of the bedroom with a gun. He is shot dead. Scott had refused earlier to negotiate a sale of his property to the government. After extensive searches, no marijuana is found. October 3rd, 1996. U.S. Public Law 104-237, known as the Comprehensive Methamphetamine Control Act of 1996, is signed into law by President Bill Clinton. October 4th, 1970. Legendary singer Janis Joplin is found dead at Hollywood's Landmark Hotel, a victim of what is concluded to be an accidental heroin overdose. October 5th, 1999. The war on drugs is an absolute failure, says Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico. Johnson also meets with founding members of Students for Sensible Drug Policy. October 6, 2000. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton is quoted in Rolling Stone, "I think that most small amounts of marijuana have been decriminalized in some places and should be." This is Steve Nolan for the Drug Truth Network.
Welcome back to Drugs, Crime, and Politics, sponsored by Drug Policy Forum of Texas. Our interviewee here today is Miss Judy Baker from Harris County? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Wasn't sure, so yay. Who is running for lieutenant governor under the Libertarian Party's name, and we hope she gets a lot of support out. If you'd like to visit her website, find out more about her campaign, you can visit judybaker.us. During the break, we were discussing some of the things that kind of irk you, and one of them was you were talking about the Teacher Safety Act, or
no? It's called the Safe School Act.
Okay.
And it was passed right after Columbine here in the state of Texas by our legislature. Mm-hmm. And what this act basically did was supposed to make schools safer. Mm-hmm. And what it's done is Instead, before the Safe School Act, we had, first, our campuses were not filled with police officers. I'm sure if you've looked at a campus, any HISD campus now, you see policemen all over the place.
Oh, of course.
And they're dogs, and they're this, and they're that. And, I mean, why don't we put the focus on education and on the teachers as opposed to policemen?
Right.
So this right away, this act, what it's done is it's given the principals a way to take the responsibility from them to talking with the parents and helping kids that have problems.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime a kid breaks a school rule, that child has, according to the Safe School Act, has committed a misdemeanor.
Mm-hmm.
And so a misdemeanor means the kid's got to go to the JP, he's got to pay a fine, his parents have to hire a lawyer, and a lot of these kids that break these, they're indigent. They're taken out of school for 2 or 3 days to be involved with court cases. Another thing that if they do something, I saw a little girl once in the Harris County Law Center, 12-year-old girl, 11-year-old maybe, who had an appointed lawyer, so obviously didn't have a lot of money in her family. Her mother has to take off work to take her to the courts.
Mm-hmm.
She's in court because she had been in a little fight in school. A policeman, campus policeman, broke up the fight. She touched him on the shoulder, and she has a felony now for an assault to a police officer. Now, is this helping our kids get educated? No. This was a nice girl, probably had potential.
Right.
But no, now she's instead in a juvenile detention center.
Right. So we kind of see the same type of thing that we're finding in any city or any state in a more, confined moiety, where we see the same things that are happening in our schools are happening in our country. We're hurting the nonviolent offenders. We're hurting someone with a lot of potential for some small criminal thing just because we can get them. I want to come back to this, but right now it seems like we have a caller, so let's go ahead and take them. Hi, caller. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yeah, that all sounds very educational, just not necessarily the things we want our kids learning at that young of an age.
What's that?
In Texas...
What are you referring to, caller?
What y'all were just talking about on the...
What we were just talking about.
On the JPs and the security in schools and how that is taken into
Well, I think what we were talking about, caller, is how we what I was about to mention is how we have to find a happy medium. And just as in the criminal court systems, we can't take every individual who needs rehabilitation. This would be a perfect world. So what we're doing is jailing the masses, hoping that we're going to catch those criminals and this large net that we also catch, nonviolent offenders or people who are even innocent.
Oh no, I was actually talking about the children in schools and how that they're using the court systems to solve minor disputes and giving people felony records for touching somebody.
Right. Well, that happens in real life too. If you touch a cop, or if you get busted for an ounce or 2 ounces or 2.1 ounces of marijuana. I'm saying, this is a metaphor for what happens in real life. But go ahead with your question, caller.
In Texas, there has been occasionally, talk about an income tax. And as a libertarian, I was wondering what your views on that are, and the 16th Amendment in general, taxation without enumeration. And what kind of ideas would you have for funding our spending habits, in short? And a quick side question for you. I know libertarians are usually the biggest Constitution fans. Do you know what most of the amendments in the U.S. Constitution are related to?
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch
I heard the question.
Okay.
I'll do the best I can to answer, okay? Number one, as far as income tax, as far as the 16th Amendment, we think they should be repealed. We believe that a flat tax is a much better tax. A sales tax would be a much better tax than an income tax. We believe it would be a better tax than property tax. We believe that way everybody pays not an equal amount, but everybody pays for what they're buying, and it just seems like a fairer tax to us. I really yes, we do. I do support the Constitution. The Libertarians support the Constitution. I'm not real positive what you were looking for as far as to how the amendments support the Constitution. I feel excluding the income tax amendment, I think pretty much there are things that just enhance the Constitution. I think when we start putting in things like making a constitutional amendment, the ones that are being proposed now, I don't think have anything whatsoever to do with the Constitution. I believe that freedom of speech is a wonderful amendment. I believe putting a person in jail for burning a flag is a terrible, terrible amendment. I don't think people should burn the flag. I think people should have respect for it, but it should not be a law that you have to have respect for the flag. The other one, of course, is somebody who wants to have an amendment against same-sex marriages, another ridiculous amendment. We're just getting into that. Morals should not be part of the Constitution. I don't believe the forefathers wanted that, and I don't believe it would be good for our country if we start putting in moral issues, because what's somebody's moral issue today might be a different person's moral issue tomorrow, and we're just going to get ourselves in big, deep trouble once we start amending the Constitution the way that the extreme right moralist people think we ought to do it.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a fact. That was a great answer to a good question. So, thanks for calling in. So anyone who would like to call in is 713-807-1794. And beforehand, we were talking about the Safe Schools Act, okay, of '95, and you were talking about certain situations where, at school, that law isn't still in action.
Yes, and there are two people, and I'm sorry that I don't have their names with me, one representative and one senator, who have both tried to put in things to cut back. One law was actually put in to try and slow things down, but it was just totally ignored. Mm-hmm. There's a senator from Conroe who is doing some serious work trying to get not repealed, but at least rules made to where it can't just be arbitrarily. I mean, one little girl was arrested for chewing gum. I mean, we're talking a 9-year-old girl.
Right. This is absolutely ridiculous. Another instance of ludicrous happenings at schools. We were talking about police in schools and how I'm kind of varied on this issue because I don't think that the teachers can control. I think that there are too many students, per teacher ratio. So I don't think that the teachers can necessarily intervene every time. So it may be good to have police around. Unfortunately, most times they're there for the after effect and not for, currently preventing situations. But something that we'd like to avoid is, we were talking about how SWAT military-style raids have been conducted on people's homes. Well, just earlier this year or a year and a half ago in Goose Creek, South Carolina, there was a military-style type raid in a high school. And, this was in a predominantly black high school. The principal just had suspicion of drug use, drug activity, and these kids were handcuffed and, thrown to the floor. And this is not a common occurrence, but this does happen at schools where kids are raided. And then typically, minimal or no, in this case, no drugs were found. So these are types of situations which definitely should be avoided in our schools. We're trying to educate our children. We're trying to, of course, have them in a safe environment, but we're not trying to treat them like criminals. So another thing that you were talking about that, kind of raised some issues with you was the recent bill that was passed. The torture bill and the elimination of habeas corpus for indicted criminals.
For non-indicted.
Non-indicted,
that's the whole point.
Yeah.
We 2 weeks ago, we were hearing all these Republican senators talking about how, boy, they weren't going to have torture, they weren't going to support it, and then all of a sudden, George Bush goes and he says, yes, we are. And they say, oh, well, we've worked out all our differences, and they've all signed in now. This terrible, terrible, terrible bill.
Right. And in fact, it was almost split along party lines. You know, 250 to 160 Republicans voted for it. Democrats voted against it. Which was, and on the Congress floor, I forget, I think it was John Boehner of Ohio, that was, you know, he said something like, I dare the Democrats to, you know, using very hyperbolic language to try to get the U.S. citizens to believe that, oh, this is not passing this bill and not supporting the Republicans, not supporting Bush's bill is going to, you know, it's a vote for terrorism, basically, is what he's trying to say. So he was like, oh, well, I dare the Democrats not to vote for this. Unfortunately, some people, you know, understand that this is kind of heightened language, and it's really just a broad brushstroke measure to say that the president, it's basically okaying the president to justify the means of interrogators and the CIA after the fact. In fact, it gives him, our president, a broader authority to decide any and every techniques that can be used.
And here's a guy who claims he's such a religious, wonderful, caring person, and he believes torture is right. Torture's not right. Torture's not right.
Yeah.
Torture's not right.
Actually, yeah, of course not.
It's not right. And yet, well, we have to have torture, otherwise we're not safe. I mean, that's a very, very sad statement that the man's making.
I think torture, it's such a common misconception, because it's like, oh, yeah, well, then we'll get the evidence I want. Typically, the British government, their parliament, outlawed torture as a means of extracting evidence, because typically people who are hardcore, they're not going to, even under means of torture, they're not going to, you know, blurt out their secrets. Anyone who's tortured, typically that evidence is not going to be true, and it's not going to lead to anything. So it's absolutely ridiculous. This measure that we're talking about, and I don't remember what the actual bill is called, do you?
No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. The measure, but it provides extensive definitions of war crimes, such as torture, rape, and biological experiments. And like we said, it eliminates the rights that are usually granted to the prosecuted in civilian and military courts. So if anyone would like to call in and talk about it with more of their commentary on this recently passed bill, which was changed and amended so many times, almost daily, before its vote, and then all of a sudden, you know...
It came out just like George Bush planned.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. So, giving him the authority. So hopefully that will change somehow in the near future. But 713-807-1794 is, you can call, and if you're trying to prank call us, we have caller ID and we prosecute. But you can call us and discuss your opinions. There was another thing we were talking about during the break that you wanted to mention. Do you recall? You mentioned several things in a row about things that irked you about federal laws.
Yeah, and I say I'm running for lieutenant governor, so I don't have a lot of business. It's just my opinion.
Right. Well, we can.
But I do have opinions, and of course, I mean, one thing you said, and I'll go ahead and, if you don't mind, expand on it. One thing you had mentioned earlier was about the fact that they say if you don't vote with us, you're a terrorist, and things like that. I have a sister who's a Muslim, and one of her senators up in the Seattle area was going to go to one of the mosques, and so they convinced my sister she should show up, and she went. This was shortly after the war, and this senator went up and went and talked to these people, and these are all peace-loving people, good people, and she went into the mosque, and she said, well, how many of you support the war? And nobody supported it.
Right.
And she said, oh, then you all support Osama bin Laden? I mean, and this is the attitude. They can't even think.
Right.
And she said, my sister told me, this woman has voted for every thing that George Bush has been pushing through. And they can't even comprehend that, no, it's not supporting the war doesn't mean that you support the evil, bad people. It's
right. Well, even, recent polls, of course, in Iraq have shown an all-time dissent for this war. People are saying that, we should leave the troops in there because we're causing civil unrest and may lead to civil war. But, that's also kind of a variable situation. It looks like we have a caller. We'll go ahead and take that. Hi, caller. You're on the air. Dom. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I guess it's October. All the freaks come out. But, yeah, it's been, and the polling in the U.S., all-time low in dissent for unfavorable positions on U.S. troops being in Iraq. So, yeah, it's definitely a rough situation.
Well, and the other thing we never ever mention in our news media is all of the Iraqis who have been killed from these people that we went in to free. I mean, it's we can sit and count, and they say, I heard some guy on the news today say, well, you still haven't had as many soldiers killed as were killed in 9/11, so we couldn't talk against, and I've heard it's above it, but this is what some guy, I was watching PBS tonight, and that's what he said. But you got to realize how many Iraqis have been killed. Well, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis have been killed.
Right, not only hundreds and thousands, I'm not sure about hundreds of thousands, but there's no actual number taken into account, so.
They're not allowed to count them.
Right.
They're not allowed to count them. And I'm not talking about the insurgents. I'm talking
just even civilians.
Civilians. I'm talking.
Right. So that's why it's just, statements like, if you listen to some of the leaders of the Democratic Party, it sounds like they're trying to get us attacked again. Just using that kind of language, that should tell you the kind of persona of the person we have that's currently leading us in office and the person who's currently the commander-in-chief and sending out all of these troops. I'm sure there's not anyone here who doesn't know someone who is currently or has been to Iraq. So, and even, those people, a lot of them are saying, and, many books have come out saying what a fruitless and pointless war this is. It's not even a war. It's more of an invasion for our own personal uses and to support your party. But that's just my soapbox. But getting back to some more state issues, do you think that there's anything that the state can do to kind of overturn this process, or I guess not?
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, of course, the people in this state can vote for congressmen and senators that don't support the war,
right,
and that support the Constitution. So I'd say they should all vote for the Libertarians, but they definitely should. There's sites on the internet that say who support the war and who don't. They can go, they can look, they can see who support the war.
Oh, a great website is ontheissues.org that has every politician and their opponents, and it lists what their stances are on everything from drugs to healthcare issues, education, and so that's a great website to go to. But another thing that people in the state, city, community, county, anything can do is write to those representatives. And if you have an issue, then write to them. It's good to complain to your neighbor. It's good to bring these issues to the air and understand that these are all things that are on our minds. We're not just blind citizens following these talking heads, but definitely write to your congresspeople and let them know how you feel. Write to Judy. She'd love to hear mail from you, and and see how you would like to volunteer for her campaign or attend some of her campaign activities. But you can do that by just going to the Googling their name or House of Representatives or Texas Legislature. So that's one of the easiest ways we can get involved, calling up offices. We've actually got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything specifically that you wanted to talk about?
Sure. Can we go back to my favorite issue, the Safe School Act?
Sure.
Let's talk about two other things.
Okay.
I've brought up a few cases. There's two other cases I think that are just quite amazing. There was a young man up in North Dallas area, north in between Fort Worth, Dallas area, he was a student. He was a member of the swim team. He was a very decent young man, good student. And his grandmother was getting old and was going to move into a assisted living type place. Mm-hmm. So he was helping his grandmother take her belongings to the Goodwill that she was getting rid of. One of her butter knives, have you heard this already?
No, I haven't.
One of her butter knives had slipped out of her belongings and fell into the back of his pickup truck. He drove his pickup truck to school, and that butter knife was in his pickup truck. He spent 1 year in alternative education because of that. 1 year. Another boy up in Conroe, 11-year-old, I think 12-year-old, maybe he's 12, he's a 6th grader, whatever they are, but accidentally, and whether it was an accident or not, I really don't care, but the story is accidentally bumped into a fire alarm. Mm-hmm. Doing a false alarm is a felony. This boy was immediately arrested. He was immediately taken to the juvenile detention center without his parents even knowing about it.
Oh, my goodness.
And, this is the kind of thing that's going on, and it's what I feel the most passionate about is the misuse of the Safe School Act.
Right. Now, is the zero tolerance policy, is that something that is part of the Safe School Act, or is that something that's just slowly and progressively?
I think the zero tolerance policy is something that's supported by the Safe School Act.
Okay.
You couldn't have a zero tolerance policy if you weren't allowed to arrest kids for doing things you didn't like them to do.
Right. But, yeah, and this is absolutely another case that I'd heard about or saw on the news was a kid who had his baseball trophy, and, of course it's got a guy with a baseball bat, the little figurine, and the baseball bat, part of it fell off. This couldn't have been more than, the size of his pen cap, and he was actually pressed charges against for carrying a weapon on school grounds. They've fallen in his car or his backpack.
And they can just do anything. And even if you're found innocent, and you've still been janked out of school, you've had to go to the court systems, it's not a good situation.
Right.
And it's costing the taxpayers a fortune.
Right. Certainly. Messing up these kids' lives, any opportunities that they may have had.
And certainly, I think, contributing to the 30% dropout rate.
Right. So basically, one of your number one issues is education. You'd like to keep kids in school.
That's exactly right.
In the schools that they want, and focus more on education and not securing them from themselves.
Right.
Right. And perhaps if we had more focus on individual students, we wouldn't have as many, kids who are going psycho and going crazy and taking it out on their fellow classmates. But yeah, the quality of our public schools has declined, and Judy Baker is the woman to support to help change this. Hopefully this is definitely one of the issues that you helped to bring to light in this campaign. But we've got about 1 minute left here, and I'd just like to thank you for coming out and speaking with us today. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion? Well,
I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to come here and be here and talk to the audience in Houston.
Yeah. Well, we definitely appreciate it. This is Judy Baker running for Lieutenant Governor. You can visit her site at judybaker.us, and she'd definitely appreciate your support, volunteering, and coming out to our campaign activities. So thank you all for joining us this evening. This is Drugs, Crime, and Politics, Houston Media Source, sponsored by Drug Policy Forum of Texas. So go out there and change laws, make things happen. Vote for those that you want to vote for, and research the issues and write to your representatives. And I guess there's not too much more we can say about that, but except that that's probably the way we want to go. So thanks, everyone, and have a good night.
present policy of drug prohibition is hopeless. It is hopeless. It will never get better. Literally, victory today is being defined as slowing down the pace of defeat.
We ought to listen to science and medicine when it comes to whether marijuana or any other substance has a medical benefit.
The fact that marijuana is the less dangerous drug.
We're going full-blown into a program that has failed and failed every other time we tried it. Please point out one success in 30 years of an eradication program that has stopped drugs from coming in this country. Point out one success, because I've reviewed that research years ago.
Let me come in, the door's fastened and the window's pinned. Keep your hand on the plow and hold on. You're searching and lost your track. You can't plow straight and keep looking back. Keep your hand on the plow and hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Your hand on the plow and hold on. Mary wore a golden chain, every link was in my Jesus' name. Keep your hand on the plow and hold.
Each life is part of a skein of immortality in which the development of the individual in society and the contribution that individual makes to the future of society and realization of the aspirations of the past is the nature of love of mankind. So that one must never act against the idea that mankind is a special species. The evil, for example, in Frederick Engels is this concept of saying man is nothing but a dingle-toed ape or something. This kind of thing. Mankind is sacred because mankind is capable of making discoveries of universal law, and being guided and acting on that basis, and changing the universe through those discoveries. No other living creature can do that, except the human individual person. And this is not something done by a collective game like playing canasta together. This is done by the individual mind, with interaction among individual minds which stimulate this process. So the individual has an immortality located essentially in their contribution to these ideas which have perpetual value for humanity and its mission as a whole. And that's the principle of law. Now the question of how would we organize a republic? First of all, we say we reject the idea that some people do the thing, that this is not law. Now the signing statement concept comes directly from the idea of the executive principle, which is an attempt to resurrect from what's called the conservative tendency of law, to resurrect the idea of empire. It comes up at this time precisely. What does President Bush say? Regime change. You go to war to effect regime change. You don't like a government, you go to war to impose regime change. Who gave you the right to go to war to change the character of a regime? You don't have that right. No government has that right to do that to other people. You can do certain things, but you can't go to war for the purpose of imposing regime change by force. It's immoral. It's imperialism. It's dictatorship. Now, the history of our republic says that a guy who does that is impeachable simply for trying to do it. Yes, the President of the United States must have executive powers, but what are those executive powers? The executive powers are to fulfill the intent of the law, which cannot be done by a parliament. Idiots think parliaments can govern competently. No parliament can govern properly. Our Congress is not a parliament. We're not a parliamentary system. We're an executive system, a presidential system. The president is responsible to all the people for initiating the things that must be done for the sake of realizing the purpose of the republic. He's responsible. How does he make these decisions? Well, he gets a lot of